Hey friends, tonight we're wandering slowly into the quiet corners of a medieval cottage. So before you make yourself comfortable, remember to like and subscribe, only if you enjoy drifting off to these sorts of sleepy stories. For now, take a breath, let your body sink where it is, and step with me into the hush of a distant century. You wake on a straw mattress, the stalks pressing through the thin linen sheet. They rustle faintly when you move, a dry whisper against your skin. Imagine drifting to sleep with a pig as your hot water bottle. You scratch absently at your ankle, feeling the telltale nip of a flea. Yes, fleas thrive here as much as the children and chickens. They leap with impunity through blankets and tunics, and there is little to be done but scratch. Reality check. This is not a gentle inconvenience. Fleas are so common they barely register, unless you count the itch that follows you through the night. The air is thick with mingled scents. Smoke from the hearth, wool blankets damp with breath, straw slowly souring under sweat. It is not pleasant, but it is familiar, like the scent of a well-worn coat. Your body adapts, even if your nose protests. You nestle deeper, accepting the peculiar cocktail of aromas as the price of warmth. The bed creaks again as someone rolls over, elbowing you squarely in the ribs. You stifle a sigh. This is part of the nightly ritual, too. The shuffle of limbs in tight quarters, the negotiation of space without words. You nudge back gently, not enough to wake them, just enough to reclaim a sliver of room. And yet, despite the crowding, despite the scratching and the occasional chicken, there is comfort here. The weight of family around you, the warmth of shared breath, the sense that in the deep cold of night, no one is alone. You close your eyes once more, listening to the steady rhythm of snores and sighs. You tug the heavy bed curtains across the frame, shutting out the draft, and perhaps, you hope, a few wandering spirits as well. You reach up, fingers brushing the thick woolen curtains that hang around the bed. They are heavy, woven tightly, and a little stiff with age. With a slow tug, you draw them closed, and the cottage disappears behind a wall of fabric. At once, the air grows closer, warmer, though tinged with the faint smell of sheep that never quite left the wool. Curtains serve a practical purpose. They keep out the draft that slips under the door and whistles through cracks in the walls. In winter, those drafts are merciless, stealing warmth as quickly as the fire gives it. Families who could afford them valued bed curtains almost as much as a good roof. Fact, in wealthier homes, these curtains were lined with embroidery, sometimes even dyed in deep reds or greens. In cottages like yours, they are plain, patched, and serviceable. But curtains are more than insulation. They are guardians of the night. The quirky detail. Many villagers believed bed curtains shielded not only from cold, but from wandering spirits. Close them tight, and ghosts, demons, or mischievous fairies would think twice before slipping under the covers. Privacy and protection all in one fold of cloth. You settle back into the straw, pulling the blanket higher. The curtain brushes your cheek as you lie down, coarse but comforting, a thin wall between you and the outside world. It muffles sound as well. The drip from the roof fades, the creak of rafters softens, and even the snores of your bedfellows are slightly dulled. Reality check. Only slightly dulled. A snore loud enough to rattle the shutters still cuts through wool without difficulty. The darkness inside the curtained bed is different from the rest of the cottage. Here it is absolute, with no flicker of ember or gleam of moonlight. It is a darkness that belongs entirely to sleep. You breathe more slowly, your chest rising and falling in rhythm with the warm bodies pressed near. The curtain sways faintly as someone shifts. You press it back into place, sealing the cocoon once more. There is comfort in this little world within a world, a pocket of warmth carved out of the cold night. The straw rustles as you nestle deeper, and you close your eyes, letting the stillness settle. Before sleep truly takes you, you whisper a prayer, just in case the shadows outside the curtain are more than drafts. You lie still in the dark cocoon of the curtains, the warmth of bodies pressing close, and the straw rustling faintly beneath you. Your eyelids grow heavy, yet habit reminds you that one more ritual must be done before sleep. You raise your hands slowly and trace a small cross over your chest, murmuring a few words into the still air. The sound is soft, barely louder than a breath, yet enough to feel like a shield. Prayer is not optional here. It is stitched into the fabric of daily life. Bells mark the hours. Priests remind you of your duties, and every villager learns that forgetting a prayer is like leaving the door unbarred at night. The air is cool, tinged with smoke, and the light comes not from sun or candle, but from embers glowing low in the hearth. They pulse like fireflies caught in a nest of ash, throwing just enough warmth to remind you what you're missing. The cottage is hushed around you, though not silent. A log shifts in the fire with a faint sigh, sending up a last thread of smoke. Beyond the walls, a dog barks once and falls quiet again. The thatch above creaks softly in the damp night air. Fact: medieval people often recited prayers before bed, asking for protection against sudden death or the snares of the devil. The quirky detail? Nightmares were sometimes believed to be the work of demons or witches pressing down on your chest, rather than simply the result of a heavy supper. You think of the cabbage stew eaten earlier, thick and sour, and wonder which explanation is more likely. Your stomach groans faintly, and you tug the blanket higher. Reality check. If a demon does visit tonight, it may only be because your digestion has staged a rebellion. But still, better safe than sorry. The prayer soothes you, not only for its promises, but for its rhythm. The words are familiar, repeated night after night until they feel like part of the breath itself. Your voice fades into the muffled silence of the curtains, and you let the words drift into the rafters, where smoke and shadows mingle. Someone beside you shifts, whispering their own fragments of prayer. A child mumbles something half-remembered, a string of words jumbled into drowsiness. The sound comforts you. Faith is not solitary here. It is a chorus, even in fragments. The darkness seems softer after the words are spoken. You feel lighter, as though you have placed your worries into invisible hands and can now surrender to the quiet of the night. Your body relaxes deeper into the straw, the scratch of stalks fading into the background as sleep begins to pull at you again. Just before your eyes close fully, you slip a small sachet of herbs beneath your pillow, trusting their curious powers to guard your dreams. Every sound is small, but magnified in the darkness. Here's your fact. Most medieval homes relied on the open hearth for heat and light. Fires were kept smoldering overnight so they could be coaxed alive again at dawn. And here's the quirky detail. Some families passed a living coal from neighbor to neighbor if a fire went out, carrying it in an iron pot like a sacred treasure. Matches, after all, were centuries away. You pull your blanket closer, though blanket might be too generous. It is a length of coarse wool, heavy and scratchy, smelling of sheep even after years of use. You tuck it under your chin, pretending the warmth is more than it is. Reality check. This is not the featherbed of fairy tales. It is a pile of straw with a side order of fleas. But it is what you have, and it is enough to make you drowsy again. The embers flicker, catching the edges of pots and stools with faint orange glimmers. Shadows lean long across the packed earth floor, wavering gently like reeds in wind. You stare at them until they blur, eyelids heavy. The smoke lingers, acrid and sweet, threading into your hair and clothes. It will cling there until morning, no matter how many times you wash. Your body shifts, the straw beneath you sighing like an old friend. You feel each uneven ridge pressing against you, reminding you that comfort in this world is measured differently, not in softness, but in surviving the cold without shivering yourself awake. The embers dim lower now, their glow sinking into ash. You close your eyes, listening to the last crackle of fire as it fades. Your breath slows, joining the rhythm of the night. Beside you, the straw shifts again as family stirs close, reminding you that in this bed you are rarely alone. You shift slightly on the straw pallet, and the rustle stirs someone beside you. A small hand flops across your arm. A child, half asleep, murmuring nonsense words before sinking back into dreams. On your other side, your spouse snores gently, the sound steady as a saw cutting through wood. The warmth of bodies presses in from every angle. Privacy here is not a privilege. Warmth is. The bed is not really a bed in the modern sense. It is a broad heap of straw, flattened by use, shared by as many as will fit. Some families sleep 4, 5, or more together, lined up like spoons in a drawer. Children squirm and steal covers, parents grumble and adjust, and everyone endures it because the alternative is freezing. Here's your fact. Communal sleeping was the norm in medieval villages, not just for families, but sometimes for travelers at inns, where strangers might end up sharing the same pallet. A soft cluck makes you open one eye. In the far corner, one of the family's hens has decided the cottage is preferable to the cold outside, perching smugly near the door. A cat sprawls on the edge of the straw heap, paws twitching as it dreams of mice. Pets are not barred from the bed. They are part of the insulation system. The quirky detail? In some places, pigs were even invited indoors during winter, their body heat considered too valuable to waste outside. You lie half asleep, lulled into drowsiness despite the snoring, when another sound joins the night's peculiar orchestra. A faint scuffle, a scratch against wood, then the unmistakable patter of tiny feet running across the beams overhead. You open your eyes to the dark and listen. The rafters creak softly, as if bearing not just the weight of thatch, but of unseen guests making themselves quite at home. It is not unusual. Then, without warning, the warmth shifts. The clouds darken, shapes twist, and the angels turn to shadows with long fingers. They lean closer, whispering in tones you cannot understand. You stir in your bed, caught in the tug of both light and dark. Reality check. This might have less to do with eternal salvation and more to do with the salted fish you chewed for supper. Heavy food, thick pottage, and ale are not exactly the ingredients for serene dreaming. Still, lying in a smoky cottage, it feels easier to believe in angels and demons than indigestion. Your breath grows shallow, your body tensing against the weight of the vision. You whisper in your dream, calling softly for protection, though whether your lips move in waking life you cannot say. Outside, rain taps against the thatch, steady as prayer beads counted one by one. Slowly, the rhythm soothes you. The shadows in your dream dissolve, fading into mist, and the warmth of angel wings returns. You sink deeper, the line between fear and comfort blurring. Dreams, like life itself here, are a mixture, a little holy, a little troubling, always touched by the peculiar. A sudden sound tugs you back toward waking, the muffled cry of a newborn from the cottage across the lane, reminding you that night is never entirely still. You wake again, though not by choice. The night outside is thick and damp, yet sound carries easily through the thin timber walls. A cry pierces the stillness, high, sharp, insistent. The unmistakable wail of a newborn. It rises, falters, then swells again. echoing through the village lane as if the whole hamlet has been roused to witness its complaint. You lie still, listening. Beside you, a child sighs in sleep, unfazed by the noise. Your spouse shifts slightly, muttering, then sinks back into snores. Only you linger in that quiet space between wakefulness and slumber, ears pricked against the dark. Here's your fact. Childbirth in medieval villages was a communal event, rarely faced alone. Neighbors would hear and often gather to help, midwives moving swiftly between cottages at any hour. The quirky detail? Some families rang bells or placed iron scissors beneath the bed to ward off evil spirits, said to linger near infants. The cries of the newborn were thought to drive those spirits away. So in a way, this shrill chorus is considered a blessing, even if your ears disagree. The wailing continues, carrying over the thatched roofs, accompanied now by muffled voices, women speaking low, steady words of comfort, footsteps moving briskly across packed earth floors. You picture the scene in your mind, the midwife with her practiced hands, the mother pale with exhaustion, the baby squirming red-faced in a woolen cloth. Reality check. Though the scene may sound noble in story, the reality is hard, risky, and loud. Infant mortality is high, mothers weary, and superstition weighs heavy on every breath. Still, the sound of a child crying is also proof of survival, fragile life declaring itself to the night. You turn beneath your blanket, the straw rustling under your body. The smoke-filled air of your cottage feels suddenly heavier, as though even it has been disturbed by the sound. The cat lifts its head, ears twitching, then flops back down, unimpressed. Across the rafters, a rat scurries, as if marking the moment in its own small way. Slowly, the cries soften. Perhaps the child has been nursed, or wrapped warmly, or sung to by tired voices. The lane grows quiet again, the village returning to its slumber. You exhale, long and slow, your own body slipping back into stillness. Just as your eyes close once more, a flicker of lantern light brushes past the shutter, the steady glow of the watchman making his rounds. The cries fade into memory, leaving the night to settle again into its restless rhythm. Just as your eyes begin to close, a faint glow sweeps across the wall, a flicker of gold slipping through the cracks in the shutter. You open them slowly, watching as the light drifts, wavers, then steadies. Outside, boots press against the muddy lane, and the watchman makes his rounds. The lantern swings with each step, its small flame trembling against the damp air. You catch the muffled clink of metal at his belt and the creak of wood as he shifts its handle in his hand. The sound is oddly comforting, a reminder that someone else is awake, keeping vigil while you lie in your crowded bed. Fact: many medieval towns and larger villages employed watchmen to patrol at night, ensuring no fires spread unchecked and no thieves prowled unseen. The quirky detail? Fact: medieval cottages, with their open rafters and stored supplies, often hosted rats and mice as uninvited tenants. Grain sacks, hanging meat, and even bundles of wool were irresistible to them. The quirky detail? Some households hung carved charms or little wooden crosses in the rafters to ward off such pests, believing the animals carried not just theft, but evil influences. Reality check. Wood charms do little against rodents. Some watchmen were known to call out the hour as they passed, not only to mark the time, but to prove they hadn't fallen asleep on duty. A curious lullaby, though one not everyone appreciated when trying to rest. The glow passes slowly along the lane, brushing against the thatch of your neighbor's roof before moving on. You shift under the blanket, listening as his boots fade into the distance. The thought of protection should ease your mind, but it also sharpens the awareness that danger is real enough to require a guard. Reality check. One lantern and a weary man cannot stop fire, foxes, or fate itself. Still, The presence is better than silence. You imagine the watchman's view, cottages crouched against the mist, livestock stirring in their pens, the church tower looming pale against the dark. His lantern cuts a small path through it all, fragile as a star lost at ground level. Somewhere, an owl hoots, and the watchman's pace does not falter. The glow fades, swallowed by the lane's curve. Darkness folds back over your window, leaving only the faint red of embers at the hearth. You breathe out, shoulders softening against the straw. The night returns to its usual chorus, snores, drips, the occasional scamper of paws overhead. Yet for a moment the memory of the lantern lingers, a tiny shield against the shadows. You close your eyes again, though in the quiet that follows, your mind drifts to the sobering thought that every night might end differently, for death is never far from a medieval bed. You whisper to the saints to guard your sleep. You close your eyes, muttering the name of a patron saint, hoping for protection. Though the mattress of straw scratches more than it soothes, the glow of the watchman's lantern has faded, and the cottage is dark once more. You turn onto your side, straw rustling beneath you, the woolen blanket shifting just enough to let in a thread of cool air. Sleep beckons, yet your mind drifts where it always seems to at this hour, toward the uneasy thought that not everyone who lies down at night rises with the morning. It is a sobering ritual, one woven as tightly into the fabric of bedtime as prayers and herbs. Fact: sudden death was common in medieval life, from fire, illness, or accident. Few could afford to take another dawn for granted. The quirky detail? Some families placed a small loaf of bread or a coin beneath the bed as an offering, hoping it would keep death itself from lingering too close, as if the grim reaper could be bribed with a snack or pocket money. You stare into the dark, aware of every creak of the rafters and sigh of the embers. Fire, even tamed in the hearth, is both warmth and threat. A single spark could leap into thatch, turning comfort into catastrophe before anyone woke. Reality check. When your roof is literally made of dried grass, fire hazard takes on a much less abstract meaning. Your breath slows as you listen to the steady snores around you. Each rise and fall of another chest is reassurance, yet you also know that sickness slips silently, striking without warning. A cough heard in the night, a fever caught after rain, could turn life uncertain in a matter of days. You roll carefully, avoiding the elbow of your bedfellow, and tug the blanket tighter as though wool itself could shield you from such thoughts. The straw beneath you pricks at your skin, earthy and real, reminding you of its other purpose. When the bed grows too fouled or thin, it is often spread on fields or burned, its life brief and recycled. You wonder fleetingly if people are not so different, used up, returned to the earth, replaced without ceremony. The thought is heavy, but not without a strange, steady peace. Outside, the rain taps faintly on the thatch, each drop counted like a bead on a rosary. You let the sound mark your thoughts, one worry per drop, until the rhythm dulls them into quiet. You remember what the priest says. To think of death before sleep is not morbid, but wise. It humbles you, focuses the soul, and makes the act of waking itself feel like a blessing. Whether that comforts or unnerves you depends on the night. Tonight, it feels like both. Reality check. Modern sleepers count sheep. You count potential causes of mortality. Not exactly the most restful pastime, but oddly fitting in a world where survival is a daily gamble. Still, acknowledging it feels like placing the thought in its own corner of the room so it does not trouble you further. The embers crackle faintly, their glow low and red like watchful eyes keeping vigil while you drift. Cats, perhaps, stand a better chance, though yours currently snores at your feet, blissfully ignoring the overhead invasion. The sound continues, a rhythmic skittering back and forth. Now and then comes the faint crack of something being nibbled, teeth working industriously in the dark. You picture the roof as a bustling night market for vermin, complete with stalls of crumbs and dripping fat. The thought is not particularly soothing, but at least mildly amusing. You exhale, long and slow, letting the heaviness of the blanket and the warmth of family beside you draw you back toward rest. Death may be a nightly visitor in your thoughts, but sleep, stubborn as ever, is stronger. Before surrendering fully, you murmur one last call to the saints, a whispered plea for protection through the long hours until dawn. You lie back again, the straw beneath you shifting with every breath, pricking faintly through the linen. The warmth of the blanket wraps close, but comfort here is more a compromise than a promise. You exhale slowly and let your lips form quiet words, words you've spoken so many times that they tumble out without thought. A murmur for protection, a plea for safety until the light returns. Fact: medieval people often invoked saints at bedtime, believing their patron guardians could watch over the vulnerable hours of sleep. Saint Apollonia for toothaches, Saint Christopher for journeys, Saint Margaret for childbirth. Each had their specialty, and you learned their names as carefully as you learned prayers. The quirky detail? Some even whispered to Saint Job, who endured misfortune, hoping he'd keep tragedy from knocking at their own door in the night. If nothing else, it made the darkness feel a little less crowded. You press your palm briefly against your chest, the rough wool scratching under your fingertips, and whisper a saint's name, half hope, half habit. The sound is swallowed instantly by the heavy curtains, as though the saints prefer secrets spoken softly. Reality check. Whether they are listening or not, the prayer settles your mind, which is reason enough to keep saying it. The smell of herbs beneath your pillow rises faintly with each shift. Lavender, rue, perhaps a hint of mint dried months ago. Mixed with smoke and wool, the fragrance is peculiar but soothing, like a charm stitched together from scraps. The air is close, heavy with shared breath and faint snores, yet the quiet rhythm of whispered words cuts through, a private thread in the communal fabric of the night. A straw stalk scratches your arm, stubbornly reminding you that no mattress is perfect. You roll slightly, pressing it flat, and sigh. The prayer continues under your breath, the syllables steadying you as your eyelids grow heavier. The saints may or may not be standing guard, but the act of naming them feels like stacking invisible stones between you and the dark. Outside, rain still taps on the thatch, and somewhere in the rafters a rat shifts. Inside, the fire sighs, reduced now to the faintest glow. The cat stirs once at your feet and curls tighter. Around you, children breathe evenly, their small sounds a chorus of life that carries you further from worry. You whisper the last name softly, almost silently, as if sealing the ritual. Your tongue lingers on the final syllable, then stills. The darkness presses close, but it is gentler now, shaped by prayer and exhaustion. Your body loosens into the straw, the curtain holding the night at bay, and at last you begin to drift, surrendering to slumber's odd embrace. The words to the saints fade from your lips, dissolving into the close air within the bed curtains. Your body slackens, heavy now against the straw. Each stalk rustles faintly beneath you, a dry whisper that blends with the steady breathing of those pressed nearby. The woolen blanket scratches at your chin, but its weight is welcome. You sigh once, long and low, and let the warmth hold you. Sleep does not arrive all at once here. It creeps in slowly, like mist over a field, wrapping first around your thoughts, then your body. Your mind drifts between wakefulness and dream, catching half-formed shapes, a lantern's glow, the sound of bells, the faint cry of the newborn you heard earlier. These fragments swirl unmoored before fading altogether. Fact: sleep itself was thought of differently in medieval times. People often spoke of a first sleep and a second sleep, rising in the middle of the night for prayer, work, or even quiet talk before lying back down until dawn. The quirky detail? Some even claimed that these waking intervals were when the boundary between the human and the spiritual world was thinnest, making prayers especially effective. Reality check. In your case, the middle of the night is less mystical and more about rolling over to escape someone else's snoring. You shift beneath the blanket, straw rustling loudly in the hush. The child beside you stirs and presses closer, seeking warmth, unaware of the creatures above. You close your eyes again, though your ears remain alert, following every squeak, every scurry. The sounds remind you that food is precious here, vulnerable to tiny jaws with relentless appetites. You think of tomorrow's bread dough rising by the hearth and half hope it survives the night untouched. The room around you hums with the ordinary symphony of shared slumber. A child sighs and kicks softly in a dream. Someone murmurs incoherently before quieting again. From the rafters, the faint scamper of a rat resumes, but its rhythm has grown oddly soothing, like rain on a roof. Even the lingering snores of your spouse have steadied into something almost bearable. Almost. You nestle deeper into the bedding, tucking your hands beneath the blanket. The scent of herbs tucked in your pillow rises faintly once more, mingling with smoke and wool until it is impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. Peculiar, yes, but somehow calming. The darkness beyond the curtains is total, a velvet hush that presses close yet no longer feels threatening. Reality check. The rituals may be odd: prayers to saints, sachets of herbs, coins or bread offered to keep spirits at bay, but they are less about changing the night than about changing your mind. The fears are still there, of fire, illness, or unseen spirits. But repetition softens them, weaving them into habits that cradle you as surely as the straw beneath your back. Your breath grows slower, heavier. Thoughts drift apart like leaves on water. The fire gives a last faint crack, then settles into silence. At last, you surrender. Sleep takes you, not in triumph, but in inevitability, folding you into its quiet arms. And as you drift deeper, your mind weaves its final peculiar vision, a dream of a future where beds are private, blankets soft, and no spirits rustle in the rafters above. Sleep folds over you fully now, yet your mind does not rest in silence. Instead, it drifts into that peculiar space where wishes take shape. You find yourself in a room both strange and wondrous. No straw mattress beneath you, no smoky air stinging your eyes, no fleas whispering their restless chorus. Instead, there is a bed of softness, layered with pillows that sink beneath your head as though clouds had been tamed for human use. You turn in this dream bed, marveling at the space around you. No elbows press into your ribs, no children roll against your side, no cat sprawls across your feet with indifference. For the first time in the memory, you are entirely alone in your rest. Privacy, that rarest of luxuries, achieved at last. Fact: private bedrooms were almost unheard of in medieval villages. Shared spaces were the rule, not the exception. The quirky detail? In some wealthier households, servants even slept at the foot of their masters' beds, like loyal but weary watchdogs. Reality check. In your cottage, solitude exists only in dreams. The air of this imagined room is clear, carrying no trace of smoke or damp wool. Curtains hang, but only for beauty, not for drafts or spirits. You breathe deeply, expecting the acrid tang of the hearth, yet only freshness greets you, cool and sweet as meadow grass. The quiet is startling, not broken by snores, by rats in the rafters, or by a newborn's wail across the lane. Here, silence itself feels like a soft blanket. You run your hands across the bedding, astonished. Linen sheets, smooth and cool, cover the bed. Beneath them, no stalk of straw pokes your skin. A pillow cradles your head, filled not with chaff, but with something lighter, gentler, feathers, perhaps. You laugh softly in your dream, disbelieving that such comfort could exist. Reality check. Even in dreaming, part of you hesitates. Can a bed truly be this soft? Can nights be this quiet? It seems almost suspicious, as though some trick of sorcery has woven the world differently. Yet the comfort is undeniable, and you surrender to it without protest. The dream shifts, weaving hints of familiarity into the wonder. A faint glow at the window, but not the watchman's lantern, only moonlight, calm and steady. Curtains flutter gently with a breeze, but no draft bites at your skin. You whisper once, out of habit, for the saints to guard your sleep. Though in this strange future chamber it seems unnecessary, safety feels as present as the sheets beneath you. Slowly, the imagined world begins to fade, its edges softening, its colors dimming. The dream dissolves into stillness, leaving only the sensation of comfort, of warmth, of peace. Wind down, the night deepens, but in your mind it grows lighter, softer. The noises of the cottage recede, the snores, the scratching in the rafters, the drip of rain from the thatch. All that remains is the steady rhythm of your own breath, rising and falling like the tide. The curtain flutters slightly as a draft slips through, and you imagine, just for a moment, that the rats themselves might drop down onto your bed. You shiver, tugging the blanket higher. Reality check. Most nights, they keep to the beams, satisfied with scraps and stores. Still, the thought lingers like a shadow. The scratching fades for a moment, replaced by silence so complete you wonder if they've gone. Then suddenly the scurry resumes, darting from one side of the cottage to the other. Your body grows heavier with each exhale, as though sinking deeper into the straw, yet more at ease than before. The scratch of wool no longer bothers you. The closeness of the bed curtains feels less confining and more like a gentle embrace. Even the peculiar smells of smoke, herbs, and damp earth soften into background notes, fading into a lullaby of familiarity. The world may be rough, crowded, and filled with curious little rituals, but sleep comes anyway, steady, inevitable, kind. And so you rest, carried by dreams of quieter bedrooms, softer pillows, and mornings that arrive gently. The saints you whispered to keep their silent watch. The fire glows faint in the hearth, and the darkness cradles you in its arms. Nothing more is needed. You are safe enough. You are warm enough. You are already drifting far enough away. End of script. Sweet dreams. The cat flicks an ear but does not rise. You sigh, softly, resigned. If vermin are to be feared, at least they are polite enough to stay out of sight. Slowly, the noise blurs into the rhythm of the night. The snoring, the dripping roof, the faint crackle of embers, all blending into a single lull. Your breathing evens, the unease softening. The rafters remain busy, but your mind grows still. And as your thoughts drift, the line between waking and dreaming bends, pulling you toward visions shaped as much by supper as by saints. You drift at last into the curious haze of dreams, though sleep here is never entirely gentle. The straw beneath you shifts, scratchy even in slumber, and the smoke in your hair follows you into your visions. Your body relaxes, but your mind plays its nightly tricks. The images arrive first as flickers, candle flames bending, shadows stretching, until they form into something larger, stranger. Dreams are not taken lightly in your world. Fact, medieval people often believed dreams were messages from God, saints, or, less comfortably, from the devil himself. A peaceful dream might be celebrated as a glimpse of heaven's grace, while a nightmare could be blamed on demons pressing upon your chest. The quirky detail? Some even blamed dreams on goblins or elves sitting atop the sleeper, a peculiar explanation for what we now call sleep paralysis. It is not just cabbage stew weighing on you, it may be a mischievous sprite. Tonight your mind is generous. Angels with wings of light appear first, drifting softly through clouds, their faces serene, their voices soothing. You feel a warmth spread through you, like the hearth fire restored, and for a moment you believe the saints themselves are watching your slumber. You reach beneath the thin linen of your pillow, feeling for the small bundle tied with rough string. The cloth pouch is coarse against your fingertips, stuffed with dried leaves that crumble faintly at your touch. You press it close to your nose for a moment, catching the sharp, soothing scent of lavender mingled with something earthier, perhaps rue or sage. It is not perfume in any elegant sense, more the fragrance of a dried garden tucked away for comfort. Such sachets are common enough. You settle once more, but as your eyes begin to close, a chorus of barking dogs rises outside, their howls pulling your thoughts toward darker, more peculiar possibilities. You draw the blanket tighter and close your eyes, but the quiet of the night fractures with sudden noise. From beyond the cottage walls comes the sharp echo of barking. One dog begins, then another joins, and soon a whole chorus ripples through the village. Their voices carry in the damp night air, rising and falling, sometimes sharp, sometimes low and mournful. Here's your fact. Dogs were a common part of medieval village life, kept to guard homes, watch flocks, and sound alarms. The quirky detail? Villagers often believed that when dogs howled at night, they were sensing spirits passing through, or perhaps even death itself walking the lane. Of course, it is far more likely that a fox has found the henhouse again, but in the dark, the imagination is more powerful than reason. You listen carefully, your heart tapping a little faster. The curtain around your bed shields you from drafts, but not from sound. Each bark feels nearer than the last, as if shadows themselves have teeth. You remind yourself calmly that dogs bark at anything, a shifting breeze, a wandering cat, or their own restless dreams. Reality check. Sometimes a howl is just a howl, no omen attached. Still, the thought lingers. A child whimpers beside you at the noise, and you place a hand gently on their shoulder, soothing them back into sleep. The warmth of their small body grounds you. Across the room, the hen clucks irritably, wings flapping once before she settles again. Even the cat lifts its head, listens, then resumes its slumber, as if to say that no spirit worth fearing would disturb its nap. The barking begins to fade, tapering off into scattered echoes, then silence. The village breathes again, the night reclaiming its stillness. The fire in the hearth pops softly, reminding you that the living world continues, steady and ordinary. You let your breath slow, matching the rhythm of quiet. Yet just as you begin to drift, the low toll of a distant bell rolls across the fields, its sound a reminder that the night is far from empty. The last echo of barking has faded when another sound rises, low and solemn. A bell tolls, its tone drawn out, vibrating faintly through the damp air. You freeze in your narrow cocoon of curtains, listening as the sound rolls across fields and thatched roofs, slipping even through the cracks in your cottage walls. The vibrations are faint, but enough to remind you how thin the distance is between you and the wider village. The bell strikes again, measured and steady. 1, 7, 2, 3, each note spaced so far apart that you find yourself counting the silences in between. This is no random ringing. It is the curfew bell, the nightly reminder that doors should be shut, fires damped down, and villagers tucked away indoors. Fact: many medieval towns rang curfew bells at nightfall to signal the time when citizens should extinguish flames and cease wandering the streets. The quirky detail? Some towns believed any fire left burning after curfew could tempt wandering spirits of the air, who might carry sparks into mischief. A curious blend of safety measure and superstition, hammered out one toll at a time. You breathe slowly, letting the sound settle in your chest. It is meant to reassure you, the community bound together by one voice in the darkness. Yet somehow the bell feels more like a reminder of how exposed you are. Reality check. Thin timber walls, straw roofs, and smoky hearths are hardly fortresses. If the bell keeps danger at bay, it is through habit, not actual protection. Still, the sound has power, and you cannot help but listen. A child beside you stirs at the noise, sighing into sleep again. The warmth of their breath brushes your arm. You shift slightly, adjusting the blanket over their shoulders, and whisper a wordless hush. The bell continues its slow rhythm, as if tolling the heartbeat of the night. You remember the stories of villagers who ignored curfew and vanished, of thieves caught under lantern light, of shadows mistaken for witches prowling past midnight. Such tales are repeated often, not necessarily because they are true, but because they keep everyone indoors when the streets are better left to silence. You find yourself glancing toward the shuttered window, half expecting to see a flicker of light beyond. Fact: many medieval villagers used herbs as protection, believing their scents could drive away illness, insects, and even wicked spirits. The quirky detecting. Rue was particularly prized as a ward against witches, though some swore by wormwood, insisting its bitter bite was enough to frighten even a demon from the bedside. You're not sure if demons care about botany, but the thought is reassuring. You slide the sachet beneath your pillow, the faint crunch of leaves following. The air inside the curtains grows close, warm with breath, heavy with smoke and wool. You shift again, the straw beneath you crackling softly. Outside, the bell gives its last mournful note, then falls silent. The stillness that follows feels heavier than the sound itself, pressing gently on your ears. You breathe out, slow, long, and the darkness folds in around you once more. Howdy check. In truth, the bell changes nothing. The walls are still thin, the night is still full of noise, and sleep is still restless. Yet there is something oddly soothing about a rule marked by sound alone, a nightly punctuation telling you, here ends the day. You nestle deeper into the bedding, adjusting your body against the uneven straw. The child at your side sighs again, settling closer. The cat stretches somewhere at your feet, its claws pricking faintly through the blanket before it curls back into a ball. The curtain stirs with a draft, then stills. With the bell now silent, you close your eyes again, drawing the wool up to your chin, and drift slowly toward warmth, even as the smoke and damp weave themselves into your dreams. You breathe slowly, letting the weight of the woolen blanket press down against your body. It is thick, scratchy, and carries a faint smell of lanolin, that oily trace of sheep which lingers even after years of wear. Beneath it, your tunic wrinkles against your skin, stiff from smoke and sweat. Yet the heaviness of the fabric has its comfort. It pins you in place, like a shield against the night air that seeps through every crack in the cottage. The smoke from the hearth still clings, curling faintly in the rafters. Even with the fire nearly out, the scent lingers stubbornly, seeping into wool, hair, and skin alike. Fact: most medieval homes had an open hearth without a chimney, so the smoke simply gathered under the roof and filtered slowly through the thatch. The quirky details. Some villagers believed this constant smoke was healthy, keeping pests from the beams and preserving meat hung in the rafters. Reality check. It also left your lungs with a permanent reminder that you were essentially living inside a slow-burning campfire. You shift on the straw pallet, adjusting for comfort. A stalk pokes your side, and you wiggle until it bends, crackling softly. The mattress is uneven, thin in places, thick in others, but exhaustion dulls the edges of discomfort. Around you, the warmth of bodies merges with the blanket's weight, wrapping you in a cocoon of shared heat. Privacy may be scarce, but warmth is abundant enough to keep the cold from gnawing too deeply at your bones. Your ears tune to the subtle symphony of night sounds. A log settles with a soft thud, sparks sighing upward. Someone exhales heavily beside you, the breath steady and deep. Outside, rain drips steadily from the eaves, a rhythm as predictable as your own heartbeat. Each sound blends into the next, weaving a lullaby of ordinary persistence. You pull the blanket higher, tucking it under your chin. The wool scratches faintly at your skin, but the warmth wins over irritation. Your eyes close, lids heavy. For a moment you think of the herbs beneath your pillow, their faint scent threading through the smoke. Lavender, sage, rue. A curious mixture of comfort and superstition, but enough to lull your mind into quiet. Reality check. This isn't luxury. You will wake stiff, smoky, and probably itching. Yet in this moment, the simple act of lying still, wrapped in heavy fabric with the fire's glow fading, feels as close to peace as the day allows. Sleep here is not indulgent, it is survival. And survival, in its own quiet way, is soothing. Your breath evens out, matching the rhythm of those around you. The weight of the day drifts away, carried off with each slow exhale. The layers of wool, the haze of smoke, the warmth of bodies, all these become the cradle that carries you gently into slumber. Yet as you begin to sink deeper, a sharp snore rattles the stillness, reminding you that dreams must first contend with the peculiar music of shared sleep. You drift in a half-sleep, wrapped in the scratch of wool, lulled by the warmth of shared breath. Then it comes. A sound so sudden and forceful that it seems the rafters themselves might creak in protest. A snore, long and rattling, reverberates through the bed curtains as if someone has attempted to play a trumpet through their nose. Your eyes open in despairing resignation. Sleep is fragile here, and this is its most relentless enemy. The pillow itself is little more than a sack of straw, lumpy and uneven, yet the herbs give it a peculiar dignity. The smell fills the close darkness behind the curtains, softening the harsher scents of smoke and sweat. Reality check. It does not banish the fleas. They still find your ankles with relentless precision. But at least the air feels a little fresher as you lie back down. The children stir beside you, one kicking out in sleep, another sighing. You shift carefully on the straw, trying not to wake the children pressed against your side. Your hand gropes gently in the dark, finding the solid warmth of your bedfellow's shoulder. With mild exasperation, you nudge, not too hard, just enough to interrupt the symphony. For a moment silence reigns and hope sparks. Then, inevitably, another snore bursts forth, louder, as though in retaliation. Here's your fact. Medieval medicine did recognize snoring, though remedies were peculiar. Physicians blamed it on excess phlegm, or the wrong balance of humors in the body. The quirky detail. Some cures advised sewing a person's nightcap to their bedding so they would be forced to sleep upright, reducing the noise. Reality check. Good luck convincing your spouse to wear a nightcap stitched to the sheets. The snoring, like the fleas, is part of life you simply endure. The sound rises and falls, sometimes a low rumble, sometimes a sudden honk that startles even the cat at your feet. The air within the curtains seems to vibrate with each breath, carrying the smell of smoke and stale ale with it. You turn onto your side, pressing your ear against the pillow, which muffles little and scratches much. You consider stuffing a scrap of wool into your ears, though that brings its own discomfort. You stare into the darkness, imagining the faces of saints painted in manuscripts, serene and calm, none of them forced to share their holy slumbers with such a racket. You whisper a small prayer for patience, though it is doubtful even heaven has devised a cure for this. Another sigh escapes you, swallowed by the rustling straw. And yet, there is something oddly human in it, this imperfect music of the night. It is the sound of life persisting, lungs filling, air moving, bodies resting after long labor. You breathe with it, slowly at first, matching the rhythm until the irritation fades into a strange sort of lullaby. Not pleasant, no, but steady, dependable. Even noise can be woven into sleep if you surrender to its pattern. The fire in the hearth gives a soft pop, as if to join in the chorus. The child at your side murmurs, twitching in a dream. The cat curls tighter, unimpressed. You close your eyes again, letting the blanket press heavily over you, surrendering once more to drowsiness. The snores continue, but now they seem distant, like waves breaking on a shore far away. Just as you begin to drift again, the soft scurrying of small feet above the rafters reminds you that not all midnight noises are human. A faint cluck sounds again from the hen in the corner, as though she, too, approves of the fragrance. The cat lifts its head briefly, sniffs, then settles once more with a twitch of its tail. Everyone has their rituals, it seems, human or animal. You rest your head, inhaling slowly. The herbs soothe your mind, if not your skin. You imagine their little leaves standing guard over your dreams, fencing off nightmares with invisible walls of scent. Your body slackens, breath evening out as the warmth of the bed draws you deeper. Yet before sleep claims you fully, another necessity intrudes, the awkward decision of whether to brave the chamber pot or the chill outside. You shift uncomfortably on the straw pallet, your body reminding you of one last task before sleep can truly settle. Beside the bed, half hidden in shadow, sits the chamber pot, a squat earthenware vessel, cold to the touch, waiting with patient inevitability. You glance toward it and sigh. It is convenient, yes, but it is also a companion you would rather not have. Here's your fact. Chamber pots were a staple of medieval homes, saving families from braving the night air and the uneven paths outside. The quirky detail? Some were humorously decorated, painted with faces or inscriptions, as if to add levity to an otherwise undignified ritual. Yours, sadly, is plain, with only a chip at the rim for character. You debate your options. Use the pot, and the smell will linger beneath the bed curtains, rising steadily as the night warms. Leave it, and the cold outdoors awaits, the ground slick with rain, shadows stretching long between cottages. Reality check. There is no winning scenario here. Comfort is measured in degrees of inconvenience, not in satisfaction. A child stirs, rolling against your side, and you freeze. Waking them would mean chaos, questions, cries, and perhaps a chorus of others deciding they too must go. You remain still until the small body sighs and settles again. The chamber pot continues its silent vigil. You weigh the risks, mutter under your breath, and reach for the vessel. The earthenware is icy against your skin, shocking enough to quicken your breath. You do what must be done, grimacing slightly at the sound in the quiet of the room. No one stirs, though the cat flicks an ear as if judging your choices. When finished, you slide the pot carefully back into its corner, pulling the blanket higher as though to erase the moment. The air within the curtains feels heavier now, the faint mingling of herbs and smoke unable to fully disguise the new addition. You close your eyes anyway, deciding that this is the price of not having your toes frozen by stepping outside. Practicality has its own comfort.